is therefore, by definition, to have the authority of God. And what is that? Why, the capacity to know exactly who we are. This aim is achievable. By use of the internet, government could record as many facts about each citizen as the citizen knows about himself. This despotic knowledge of everybody would be sufficient to enslave the people and would replace the accepted modes of rule, such as corruption, political assassination, secret police, and genocide. By the principles of power madness, government can do this, therefore it will do this. Thus, French and I agreed that ministerial hijacking of the World Wide Web must be inevitable, imminent, final, and disastrous. I despaired at this. French responded to my desolation with characteristic brilliance. No answer could be reached by thought. French therefore offered to dream about life under the future tyranny in the hope of finding a solution. What follows is my account of French's dream experiment. Now we go on to the blank verse. You might have thought my story would be set in fairylands appropriate for dreams, but French's vision settled on a place epitomizing stark reality, to wit, the district known as Merseyside. Now, you may find it relevant to know the River Mersey has more sides than one. There is a right side with a famous port. There is a left side with a maze of dark, incessant lanes where French, the milkman, first became the dark, incessant thinker whose ideas pervade this troubled history. I do not give a name to all the streets and towns of that untravelled hinterland behind the River Mersey's western bank. It is important to our tale to know that French looked on this homeland as a place without identity, a place whose sense of being was enshrined in one idea: not being Liverpool. And thus, for French, the questions "where am I?" and "who am I?" became a dominating theme of life. If you have bravery enough to come with me through French's dream, then visualize the inside of a home. A kitchen window gives onto a lane lit by faint twilight of an early spring. The room is empty and the door is shut, but somewhere from outside a girl's voice sounds in tones of aggravation or distress. A moment more elapses, then the door is suddenly burst open, and against the fading dusk the silhouettes of two convulsive bodies intertwine. A girl appears to struggle in the grasp of some outlandish man whose movements are grotesque and incoordinate. The girl reels back against the kitchen table, and the two collapse into the dark recess below the window. Somewhere in the darkness, thumps and cries continue till the kitchen light comes on, displaying the slight figure of the girl. A face, flushed by the recent strife, looks out beneath a heavy woolen cap. Her donkey jacket, in between the black lapels, reveals a t-shirt featuring in green, unsparing Gothic style, a skull. Beside her at the kitchen table sits a tailor's dummy in a pinstripe suit who smiles in waxen contemplation of the 7 china swallows on the wall. Hunching the shoulders of her coat, the girl takes 3 steps back toward the kitchen door and slams it shut. She turns and, catching her reflection in a full-length mirror, stops and hurls away the woolen cap. She puts a kettle to the tap and ponders on the irksome flow of fluid. We can't know the origin of all her discontent, but think a moment of her journey home, an endless one-way conversation with surveillance cameras. Her retina has been recorded 6 times along the way. We easily forget she's in a system that knows who she is. It knows her name, Claire Lowe, and everything about her, such as where she is and why. So Claire must pay this price for order and security. Should Claire have anything against the status quo knows this already. Everything's on file. Claire's thoughts are broken by the doorbell's chime. She turns the kettle on, undoes the door a crack, and peering through the gap says, "Well?" Muffled by Mersey vowels, a voice speaks out. "This Mr. Lowe's address?" "Well, that's my dad. He's out." "Can we come in, miss?" says the voice. Suspiciously, she puts her head outside. "Where are you lot from, then?" There's an awkward pause. The outer voice declares, "The occupant is asking where we're from." Distant replies re-echo from the lane. "We're from the crack of bloody Doom, that's where." Claire's getting bored. "If that's the case, come in," the other says. "Hang on," in tones of some relief, and Claire, inside the open door, puts tea bags in the pot. Some banging of car doors ensues, and then 2 men appear who call to mind spy movies of the past, with trench coats, belts and poker faces under trilby hats. Between them walks a 3rd man with a look of utter stupefaction and despair. The spook-like men arrange themselves indoors. Each has the prisoner by a sleeve. In cool constabulary style, the senior spook says, "Now then, miss, can you identify this man?" Claire pours water, turns and stares. Referring to the middle face, she says, "Do you mean this one? That's my dad." "You sure?" Claire opens up the fridge and finds the milk. Her dad stands quiet as if in wonderment. "Yes. Why is he coming home like this?" asks Claire. "Have you arrested him?" There is a pause in which the servants of the state display an unprofessional embarrassment. "The problem seems to be," the first one says. "The difficulty," adds the other one. "In short," the senior spook takes up the theme and quavers into silence so profound they hear the clock tick 6 times. He gasps at length, "We don't know who he is." "Oh, well," says Claire and pours a mug of tea. "And is there any reason why you should know who he is?" "It's not just us," the spook replies. "His credit card won't work." It seems the spook requires to justify himself. "So it's the bank and inland revenue and national health," his mate concurs. "So all those Vogons," Claire remarks, "those mandarins, they don't know who he is? Well then, they need to sort it." "Can't be done," officialdom replies. The spooks are silent. It is clear the online manual has nothing that relates to this emergency. Spook 1 collapses on a chair. "The problem is," He hesitates. His mate chips in. Upstairs. So what's upstairs? Says Claire. Upstairs is where the mainframe lives, Spook 2 remarks. Claire's eyes are round with wonder at the thought of such a secret governmental power. Computer? She naively squeaks. Of course, computer. Sodding processor that knows who people are. And now the spooks betray in stark frustration all the sorry tale. Computer failure is a circumstance beyond imagination. Therefore, no specific regulations are in place to guard their tongues. And as their world consists of regulations, they have neither guide nor limit. What they finally conclude is this: the main computer cannot fail, but someone's shafted it, and every trace of Mr. Lowe has vanished from the files. But still, why can't he come home by himself? Asks Claire. And that revives official fears. We cannot be responsible not for unspecified inhabitants who don't know who they are. Claire's thoughts begin to stray. You said you don't know who he is, she probes. You never said he doesn't know. The spooks are unimpressed. Of course, if we don't know, then no one knows. Claire's pensive mood persists. A second passes and then two. Find out, she cries in sudden urgency. Find what? Find out if he knows who he is. Deep frowns greet this suggestion. Does he usually? He used to, Claire remarks reluctantly. We haven't been on speaking terms of late. That's about it.
We've got lots of time.
Clever.
I've got lots of poem, if you're not careful.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Well, I'll find a
Whatever
bit
you
of a gap, I mean, naturally.
All right.
Spook 2 acts like a man who's taking charge. He fixes on the prisoner's ear and shouts, "Hey, Larry Lowe, do you know who you are?" And Larry flaps his hands around his ears to show he isn't deaf and gives reply. "I'm Larry Lowe, just like you said." The room is silent suddenly, as though the nub of some profound discussion has been reached. The senior spook returns from reverie. An easy thing to say, "I'm Larry Lowe." Oh, yes. And who is Larry Lowe? Now that's the point. A signal seems to pass between the two officials. Who is Larry Lowe? They scream together. Who is Larry Lowe? If we don't know, then you don't know. They grill their man like trained inquisitors. At length they sum it up. We don't know who you are. This seems to be the problem that began the whole entanglement, and so they sit, accept some tea, and pass the time of day. But Larry takes a step or two away to improvise a soft soliloquy. In the bedroom where my father died, his regimental greatcoat, stiff as a board, has hung on the wormhole door these 19 years. I've come home to the house my father left me, and the rooms resound with quiet emptiness, like the silence asleep under the folds of his old overcoat. His house is as empty as his name, and my name, the name the world rejects as meaningless. Strange how light it feels among old neighbours and friends who don't know who I am.
That's great.